Nowhere on Earth is life so flamboyant as amongst the crowded undersea cities that are the coral reefs of Indonesia. Unimaginable variations in shape, pattern, and colour reflect the endless adaptations shown by the creatures that live here. Each unique combination the product of millions of years of evolution. Midway along the narrow strait separating the Indonesian islands of Sulawesi and Lembeh is the busy port of Bitung. Vessels of all shapes and sizes ply their trade amongst these exotic islands. Short distance below the surface, there are two very different and very unique underwater ecosystems. Scoured by the tides, the centre of the channel is the deepest part, favoured by the larger ships. But it's along the edge of the strait where coral thrives, home to a kaleidoscope of undersea creatures that have evolved in many different directions. Mimicking the colours of the corals, the stonefish is one of the reef's most deadly predators. Upturned eyes and an all-engulfing mouth rarely miss their passing victims. The tiny but deadly venomous blue ring octopus stalks the reef, its colours vibrant to advertise its venom. Corals grow by sunlight feeding algae within their polyps. Nicknamed the solar-powered nudibranch, this unusual sea slug devours the coral, hijacking the coral's tiny plant cells to use within its own body to generate energy for itself. Bubble corals provide an inflated sanctuary for many of the smaller inhabitants of the reef, slipping between the thumbprints of the water-filled sacks when danger threatens. Bristling with venom-tipped spines, the lionfish waits, concealed among sponges and sea squirts. Motionless, it becomes part of the reef. The leaf fish sways in the current, just waiting for a fish to stray too close to that cavernous mouth. This is a supreme ambush predator, camouflaged by colour, shape, and even movement. The cuttlefish blends into the corals, hanging motionless, waiting to snatch its prey. Like an undersea shapeshifter, a school of shrimpfish moves as one, twisting and turning in perfect formation to mislead and confuse enemies. Life alongside the strait is simple and uncomplicated. There are no roads on Lembeh Island, and few linking the villages on the Sulawesi side, so the strait is the main highway, used by the people of the area for their business and communication. Cargo boats of all shapes and sizes ply their trade along this busy waterway. Heavily laden taxi boats cross and recross the strait, taking outlying villages to and from the bustling markets of Bitung. Little do they know of the treasures that lie below. The theory of evolution states that creatures adapt over time to fit in with their environment, and few illustrate the theory better than the ornate ghost pipefish in its many and varied colorations. Blending perfectly with their surroundings, this pair drift among the spiky coral, sucking up tiny shrimps through their tube-like, elongated snouts. The distended belly of the larger is the female's egg sac, actually 2 fins specially adapted to hold up to 300 eggs. Crammed full, the next generation is ready to hatch. Once pipefish have mated, the pair will remain together for the remainder of their lives. Coral is essential protection for the next generation. A cometfish finds a safe crevice for its eggs, yet stays close by, fanning clean, oxygenated water over its brood. Vulnerable during its enforced vigil, maybe the resemblance of its colour and pattern to the head of a moray eel may help to deter most would-be predators. But parental care is not the norm beneath the sea. In contrast, the cuttlefish spread their eggs around. In the late afternoon, a pair of cuttlefish carefully place their eggs amongst the protective coral. For the female, the urge to lay is overwhelming. The normally shy male overcomes his fears to play his part, changing colour and posturing in a series of diversionary tactics to draw attention away from his mate. Each egg is laid individually to ensure maximum survival in the security of the coral nursery. If one egg is found by a predator, others will survive. Though they are distant relatives of the slugs and snails, the cuttles are among the most advanced animals of the sea, communicating through rapid waves of colour and change of pattern. It's hard to imagine how such sophisticated behaviour can be carried out by an animal that may hatch from its egg, reach maturity, and die within just a couple of years. Coral offers many types of protection. The transparent bodies of these tiny fish make them virtually invisible on their hosts. It's only when they move that they put themselves at risk of detection and becoming another fish's next meal. But it's among the invertebrates that nature is at her most inventive. The delicate squat lobster are always found living among the folds of the barrel sponges. As the sponge filters food from the water, the lobster picks scraps from the spongy surface. Some of the most extreme examples of the theory of evolution can be found amongst the tiniest creatures of the corals of the Lembeh Strait. Here, different species have evolved, so they are virtually invisible on their hosts. Some that move freely around the coral reef have developed the most unusual shapes and colorations to blend in. Many of these tiny creatures live in permanent symbiotic associations with sponges, anemones, soft corals and crinoids, often matching their hosts' colours, textures, shapes and behaviours so well that the little illusionists vanish from the sight of predators. So close is the relationship that some crabs spend the whole of their lives on a particular species of hard or soft coral. So complete is the evolution that the crabs are all but indistinguishable from their hosts. Colour, texture, shape and pattern are all so closely mimicked that they could be part of their living homes. The spiny arms of the feather star give a basket-like lair in which to hide and live out your life. Stripy bodies ensure the deception is complete, and it takes a very sharp eye to pick out the shrimps and crabs from their protector. It's astounding how splendidly these underwater critters have evolved to mimic their homes. For the fishermen of the Lembeh Strait, there's never time to spot these tiny wonders of evolution. They're too busy trying to eke an existence from the already heavily fished waters of the strait. The first challenge is to find the fish, and they do it as they've always done it. And then it's time to get the nets into the water. The technique's a simple one. The net is set so as to encircle the fish. Then it's down to the swimmers to tighten the net around their catch. These Indonesian breath-hold divers will spend hours diving down in the most hazardous of conditions. Holding their breath for minutes at a time, they literally walk the net across the reef, risking entanglement in the ropes and netting. In the daily struggle for survival, they can have no thought for the corals of the reef that take a dreadful punishment from these techniques. This is subsistence fishing at its most basic. Not for profit, but for simple survival. And for all the effort, the catch is tiny. Not much to share between these men and their families, but enough to keep them going until tomorrow. Coral reefs still hold surprises for scientists. A few years ago, a biologist was examining some fan coral in his laboratory when he noticed a tiny seahorse, which he thought was a baby of a known species. Closer examination revealed curious nodules over the surface of its body, resembling those on the coral itself. A new species had been found, the pygmy seahorse, the smallest seahorse known to exist. The search for them in the wild was on, and they're now known from several locations, including a number of varieties in the Lembeh Strait. But they still remain enigmatic. We know little of their lives. This curious headbutting behavior is seen here for the first time on television, but what's its purpose? Part of its courtship ritual? A prelude to mating? Or perhaps something more confrontational between two rivals? Nobody knows. The beautiful markings of the harlequin shrimp give no hint as to its brutal hunting technique. Attacking the legs first to immobilize its prey, the shrimp hauls its victim back to its lair as a living but powerless supply of food that may last the shrimp for several weeks. Meal times, like mating times, can leave the feeder exposed and vulnerable, so this crab takes shelter beneath the spreading tentacles of a nearby enemy as it rips the soft body from the shell of a sea snail. Every trick for survival is the law of the reef, especially when the predators are as formidable as the spectacular mantis shrimp. Growing to a foot or more in length, the mantis is an active predator. Different types of mantis shrimp have two very distinct techniques of hunting. This is one of the smashing mantis shrimp that stun their prey with a powerful blow from their club-like claws. Other mantis shrimp have a different technique. The claws, that are essential to burrowing in the seabed, have another function. They've been refined into the ultimate hunting weapon, the spear. Even the spine-covered porcupine fish cannot escape the lethal, stabbing forelegs. The jawfish never seems to stop excavating its burrow, using its mouth to lift pebbles, shells, and any other obstruction. Each mouthful is followed by a quick survey to check for predators or rivals. Rising above the seabed, its huge eyes are perfect for spotting predators or a potential mate. But the large mouth isn't just for construction. It has a more tender use, receiving the eggs from the female and carefully holding them until they hatch. Millions of years of evolution have built the complex and unique jigsaw puzzle that is the Lembeh Reef. What this cauldron of biodiversity does not need is another species introduced by man. But that's exactly what's happened. A shipment of fish, in transit for the aquarium trade from the Banggai Islands, several hundred miles to the south, was spilt into Bitung Harbour. and in an uneasy truce with the anemone fish, against all the odds, 2 small colonies have successfully established themselves in the Lembeh Strait. As soon as darkness comes to the undersea world, the hunters of the night emerge and patrol the seafloor alongside the reef. Octopus leave their daytime lairs among the coral and head out to hunt over the adjacent seabed. The seafloor at night is a place of danger, and any reef creature that strays here after dark does so at its own peril. Close to the equator, the length of day and night vary little. The pulse of life is regular, and the mandarin fish has attuned its mating rhythms to the hours of least danger. As darkness falls, when the daytime hunters are in retreat, and the nocturnal predators still haven't emerged, it's at this changeover time that the usually secretive mandarin emerges to search for a mate. Sometimes the quest ends in conflict when the encounter is a territorial dispute. Posturing and a show of colour aren't always enough to send a rival on its way. Sometimes they get really stuck in, biting the challenger into submission. There is so little time in which to find a partner. Already in the darkness, the cuttlefish is hoovering up any living thing foolish enough to stray onto the ocean floor. Agile and constantly altering colour to blend with its surroundings, little can evade the lightning speed and deadly aim of its grasping tentacles. Yet the primeval urge to mate is overwhelming. Despite the dangers out there in the nighttime ocean, when a partner is found, the mandarins rise from the protection of the corals into the dark of the water column in a brief, yet spectacular and rarely witnessed consummation.